This video, I'm really going to focus on what is a demo, what should a demo do, different terminology that gets used around demos, and how to understand what people mean by those different terms. So we're going to be talking about a vertical slice, the less often spotted horizontal slice, and the difference between demoing something in order to playtest it versus demoing something in order to sell it. The current games ecosystem has really muddied the water around what a demo is, and that is making it confusing for game developers when they try and put together a demo. I want to start off with a case study of a good way to do this. There is a game called Underboard that I played recently on the channel. There is also an earlier build of it on itch.io, and it's branded slightly differently. So what the developers did here is they used itch.io as a testing bed for their game. They're just trying to get people to play it and tell them if it's good. Only after they've done that do they put the game on Steam. The reason I think this is a good example is there's a clear split between this early development phase where they're trying to get people to play the game just to work out kinks and bugs of the game and make sure that it's of a high enough quality to bother even considering it as a commercial product. No one's asking for any wish lists or anything like that until we know that people find it fun. There are occasions when I've been quite harsh towards games that have been submitted for my review stream on this channel. It's because the game is being positioned as a commercial demo to try and sell the game, to try and get people to wishlist the game. And I don't think it's at that stage yet. The reason I think this is an example of very good practice is the game doesn't become a demo until it's had people playing it and giving feedback on it. Everyone who played this version, they were doing the developers a favor. They were helping make this game better. When your game is in its early stages, it's an early alpha for playtesting, everyone who plays that game and gives you feedback is doing you a favor. Maybe those people will be a potential customer further down the line and they'll give you some money and stuff like that. But at this stage of your development process, when you're in early development, what you are getting from people isn't money, it is R&D time. Those early adopters, those people who are the earliest to get excited about your game idea, to sort of jump on the train, to test it out even when it's in a slightly shoddy early condition, those people are doing you a favor, and that is the value they provide to your game. They help you develop it. They help you see the things that are wrong with it.
What are you supposed to be finding out from this? You know, that's what a playtest is. It's like a science experiment. You can have a grey box prototype and you can give people like a really ugly prototype and you can say, what about this is appealing to you? But this is a game where we've already steamed really far ahead with this and we've kind of decided what we're going to do. So the playtest needs to identify the things that the players have the most problem with. Your playtest needs to have a goal, but the more problems you leave in your playtest that you already know about, the more feedback you're going to get that's not particularly helpful because it's just pointing out what you already know. Fix the stuff that you already know isn't really working, you know.
And what a demo was in the 90s was very, very clear. This game has been finished and we have cut up a section of it to give out for free. And then when you finish playing that, you go, yeah, I want to give these developers money. I want to play the rest of this game. But fundamentally, what you play in that demo is the same as the full game you're going to get.
You've played the shareware, now buy the game. In the retail version, I'm much funnier.
The project timeline of the game I'm currently working on, I intend to put out a public alpha of it in December, like a proper official public alpha, where you can play through the main loop of the game and get a feel for it. And my intention with that public alpha is to gather information. I want to know what people find frustrating about the game. I want to know what people find fun about the game. But even at that stage, I will still be testing the viability of the game, rather than just assuming that what I'm making is a potential product and putting it straight on Steam. All this said, it's already been playtested. I've already had people in our Discord have a look at it, very kindly send me a video of them playing it. And one of the things that's helped me with is seeing things I couldn't see a problem with myself. So for example, you collect keys and then you spend keys whenever you open a door to generate the next room, and then you pick the next room from a deck of cards. And the playtester that sent me a video was not making those connections. They didn't understand that it was a one-to-one relationship between spending the keys and opening the doors. So this was a mechanic that needed a little bit more communication in the game. So I added this animation when you spend a key to open a door. I didn't wait until I'd been making the game for 6 months before I gave it to someone to get that insight from them. I got to a point where I felt like the game was enjoyable to play for a couple of minutes, and then immediately started getting people to playtest it. If we come back to that central question of what is a demo and how will it make you a better game developer if you have a clearer definition of a demo? If I start with the assumption that the intention of a demo is to sell a game, whereas a playtesting prototype, like an early alpha or something like that, at that stage of development, we haven't yet made the assumption that the game we're making is going to be a viable commercial product. And please don't think I'm just being some sort of word police, language pedant about this. I do not care how you use these terms, but I do think you will become a better game developer if you think of this distinction. A demo is there to sell a game. What type of games do we sell? We sell games that we know people are finding fun. You don't just assume that every project you start has the capacity to be a commercially released game for sale on Steam. Now, there will be some of you watching this who think that everything I'm saying here is blindingly obvious, basic game dev stuff. And then there will be people who are going, They've sort of got this idea in their head that a game is anything you make in a game engine, right?
I made it in Unity, so it must be a game.
No, the process of game development is taking a bunch of code and art and ideas and gradually shaping those into a game. And you do that by going back and forth with players and getting them to play it. Because you're always going to play test your own game in the sort of intended way that the game is meant to be played. What is a vertical slice? What most people expect to see when they play a demo of a game is a vertical slice. In games industry terminology, a vertical slice wouldn't necessarily always be a public demo. It's a particular state that a build can be in, and that might be used for internal testing. It might be that you get the game or a section of the game to a vertical slice level, and then you show that to your publisher, or you show that to internal QA or whatever. It's not simply a form of public demo. But what most people expect to see and play when they play a demo of a game, whether the game is actually finished, is a vertical slice. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what that means, and then I'm going to talk about what a horizontal slice would be, which is a thing in product design. It's just not used as often in game design, but I do think horizontal slice can solve the problem that certain types of games have with building a demo that properly conveys what their game is about. The point of a vertical slice is if you imagine the game as a timeline of the player experience from when they first start playing the game till the 10th hour or the 100th hour or the 1000th hour, when all of the game is finished, it's in a horizontal timeline, right? So you can imagine it like this, like you're editing a video or animating a timeline in a game engine. It's a horizontal line. That's the game. Now the vertical slice, we cut across that line and we take a slice of the game and we say this is 5% of the full final game, but as you play this section of the game, it will feel like you're just playing a section of the final game in terms of the overall quality, the art style, how everything feels. You're giving people a sense of what the final game will be like by having this little slice. Generally, that's what people expect when they play a demo. There might be a few things missing, but they expect a vertical slice pretty much. Now, one of the things I've seen in demos before, which felt a bit uninspiring and made me feel like the developer was trying to trick me a little bit, was having features that seem to be necessary for the whole game to work, that are hinted at, that are there in the interface, and then they're just sort of hand-waved because the developer has just decided to give this first tutorial section as the vertical slice, and in that section we don't have any of these. For example, this game I played a few months ago, we get to pick up a lot of items in this tutorial level. When they go into an inventory, there also seems to be some sort of magic system, but because the demo is a very narrow vertical slice of just this first tutorial level. We don't get to see any of these features in action.
How does this all work? Like, what else is there to buy? You know, showing me that there's an inventory system, but not necessarily showing me items. That's a problem, I think.
And as a player who's quite critical and has maybe been stung before by early access games, this is not helping to convince me that all of these subsystems and features are actually in the game yet. And it's not letting me play with them, so I can't actually see if the whole game is something I would like. So if you make a demo and your approach for making a vertical slice demo is to have the first level, is to have what you consider the tutorial, the first time user experience, the onboarding as the demo for your game, it kind of needs to contain everything that the game is. Because if you make a game that has two parts, like there's a shooting part and then there's a base building part, and the base building part doesn't come into way later and you don't include it in the demo, then you haven't really given people a proper understanding of what the game is. The demo for We Harvest Shadows is quite long, and it did a very thorough job of convincing me that the way it had combined together cozy and horror was very interesting. So that's an example of the demo really doing its job to find someone who might be the ideal audience for the game, and then prove to that person that the game is what it says it's going to be. So a vertical slice is a state a game can be in that helps to convey the final quality of all of the parts of the game. There are two big mistakes that lots of indie developers make. One is that they start treating their game as a commercial demo for a project when it's not actually at this stage yet. It's still a rough prototype. And the second one is that they do try and make a vertical slice the final target quality of the game, but they make it too narrow. And that means that the vertical slice is more like a diagonal slice. It kind of misses stuff out and it doesn't really give the player a full sense of what all of these systems are. Another way to think of your demo and what should be in a vertical slice of your game. Like, imagine someone who wants to play your game, they like the central idea of it, but they're going to have some doubts about it. What would those doubts be? And then what can you make sure you show to alleviate those doubts? That's kind of really what design is. That how do we make sure that this thing we're making actually fits the audience for it and makes them happy in some way? Now, the problem with the vertical slice approach kind of assumes that your game is this straight line timeline, and ideally all of the parts of the game can exist in this one chunk. Like there's an hour of the game where you can experience everything in that time. You can fight a boss, you can craft a dog or whatever it is you do in your game. You can do it all together in this hour of game. And this is why there are certain genres of games where this might not be as appropriate. If you have a game that is very slow and is very much about unlocking lots of things, then this is where you might go for a horizontal slice instead. We've got our horizontal timeline of our game experience. A vertical slice is when we cut across that timeline and we show everything working together for a certain amount of time. A horizontal slice is when we cut across the timeline, but we cut out some of this content either side. Example of this would be something like, when people release a sandbox game, you can't really give people a sandbox game and just let them play it for 30 minutes and go, yeah, that's it, that's the end. Because they're not really going to have achieved enough to get a sense of what the game is about. There's usually a bit too much sort of investment in collecting things and building them into other things. So with a sandbox game or a game that is very crafty buildy, very based on sort of progression or things that the player builds, it might be more sensible to create a horizontal slice where we sort of create all of the game, but only through 30 or 40% of the game systems, and then we leave stuff out either side. When Prison Architect went into early access, it only had a sandbox mode. It didn't have a campaign mode. So that is an example of giving people enough of the game to actually be able to play a game of it, right? This is very relevant for things like management games, city builders, anything where you sit down for like 4, 5, 6 hours and you play like a little campaign of one thing, like building a city or playing a scenario out in a 4X game. For people to understand what this type of game is like, they really need to be able to play a full session. So the best way to demo that really is to allow them to play a full session, but just don't give them the whole tech tree. In this case, what you're making is actually a horizontal slice because you're giving them what feels like a full experience of playing the game, but you're kind of cutting out sections of it. So this might be an RTS where you can play a scenario, but you can only play a scenario as one faction. It might be a crafty buildy survival game where There are entire tech trees or resource types that are just not included, but you can still get a really good sense of what is in that game. And the stuff that you leave out, you kind of message that it's in there and you tease that this is something you'll get in the full game, but fundamentally the player has done all of the basic stuff in the game. It's not like the example earlier where you've got a vertical slice tutorial that goes, oh yeah, and there's magic later on, I don't know, whatever, there's an inventory, there's crafting, I'll do that later. It's giving you all of the core mechanics and then it's just saying, oh, there's other content using these and you get these in the full version. A demo is for selling a game. A prototype is for validating and testing an idea to decide whether you want to take it to market as a full game. A good demo should answer any doubts that the core audience for that game have, give the audience confidence in your ability to make the full game, even if you haven't actually finished making it. What the demo needs to not do is hand wave features that the core audience for that game really care about and cast doubt over your operation, because if you do that thing of just, oh yeah, maybe there'll be some magic, I don't know, your game is undercooked. It shouldn't be at that demo stage if you're still doing that kind of stuff. Ultimately, what your demo needs to do is answer the questions, answer the doubts that a fan of that type of game might have when they approach your game. All of those questions should be answerable by playing your demo. And if at any point your demo feels like it's trying to hide the answers to these questions from your players, they will know, they will sniff it out. The thing about making indie games is that whatever space you're working in, whether you're making the next Tiny Glade or the next Vampire Survivors or Coffee Talk, fans of that genre will have played more of those games than you have. Logistical reality of the fact that all the time you spend making games, they spend playing them. So if your demo feels like you're not really a fan of that genre, you don't know what you're doing, you're feeling your way in the dark and you're trying to hide things, it is not going to convince those people to play your games. And those people, those genre sickos that are the ones that really, really like that type of game, they are the people that will be the earliest adopters. They will be the people that are like content creators and have a YouTube channel about that type of game or write a blog about that type of game. Everything you do that feels like it is trying to cheat them in some way is a death sentence for your game, which is good because there are too many games anyway.